Hi, welcome along to Barbecue Life, where great barbecue doesn't cost a fortune. Today we are doing a leftover cook. So I cooked some beef brisket over Christmas and I stuck what was left over of that, about a kilogram, in the freezer, and we're going to be using that to make a beautiful brisket lasagna. So let's get on with it. So we're going to jump straight in to getting the Kamado Bono lit. So I'm just going in into the charcoal basket with some Texas Club charcoal. Just want to get that in there, and then a couple of little woody firelighters, get them lit, and then I'm going to get my deflector plates on top just so that they start warming through, because we're still in the early stages of the year, and thermal shock, we stand much more chance of cracking them. So you can see that I've got my deflectors wrapped in tin foil, and that is a video we're going to get to in the future as to why I'm doing that from now on. I'll put the first one in its proper place, and then the second deflector I've put on top of that, facing the other way, so that later on in this cook we can just pull that over the other side to give us a complete indirect zone, where at the moment we just want a half indirect zone. So get that in place, nice and easy to move over. Then we're going to get our pot ring in place, and we're going on with our cast iron pan. So I bought a brand new cast iron pan over this winter, picked up a bargain in Sainsbury's. This was only 30 quid, and it's enamelled, so I haven't got to worry about all of that seasoning, which is an absolute pain in the arse as far as I'm concerned. I hate normal cast iron. Some people absolutely love them, but the whole seasoning situation really annoys me. And out in a moist shack, it doesn't matter how much I season stuff, I always still end up with a spot that I have to get back and scrub, and so on and so forth. So anyway, we're using an enamel cast iron pot. We get that in that pot ring, and a bit of oil in there, and let our temperatures come up to a nice temperature. So we're aiming for about 180 to 200 degrees C. With that half indirect, so we've got a nice fierce heat over one side of the pot, but indirect over the other, and that should keep it at a nice sensible heat. So this took around 35 minutes to get up to that temperature. As I say, we're still quite early on in the year when I'm filming this. So vents fully open at the bottom, and daisy wheel open at the top. While it's coming up to temperature, as soon as that ceramic starts to become a bit warm, we just put our hand on and we can feel it's starting to warm up. That is when we dial our temperatures back in. So I went about 1.5 fingers in the bottom vent and 1.5 on the top vent, and that gave me 180 degrees C on the dome thermometer. And that was about right for this cook. So once that's all up to temperature, I'm going straight into that oiled pan with some diced red onion. Just going to get that in there, let that start sizzling away. And then while that is sizzling away, we can prepare some garlic. So we're going to get that in as well. Once that onion has started to really soften down, we don't want to put the garlic in too early, because garlic is very prone to burning, especially at the high temperatures that we're cooking at inside the Kamado. So we only put that in right at the very end, and only for a minute or two, just so it just brings the smell. You want to be able to smell that garlic out through the vent, but not overcook it. Then we're going to go in with our liquid, so that breaks the fry and that stops us from burning our garlic. So now's where we get a little bit different to a standard lasagna recipe. So I've always gone red wine in my lasagnas and spaghetti bolognese, anything that's a ragu based to begin with. But today we're going with port. It's that little bit sweeter, and it just adds such a wonderful extra depth of flavour into this. We're going in with 100 ml just to break that fry, and then a good glug of Worcester sauce, and about 100 ml of balsamic vinegar, which again is a strange ingredient into the ragu, but that is going to help cut through the richness of the brisket that we're going to be adding in a minute. So we've got them liquids in there. We're just going to let the alcohol come out of that port just for a couple of minutes, and then we can add our seasoning. So we're just doing a seasoning dump here. So we've got 3 beef stock cubes. We've got 2 teaspoons of oregano, so 3 teaspoons of oregano, 2 teaspoons of thyme, and half a teaspoon of chili flakes, and then some salt and pepper. And that's my basics of what go into the bottom of a ragu. So just get that mixed through as well. Now we can add our brisket. So we've got this brisket, and I've chopped it up really, really roughly. We don't want some massive chunks, and we don't but we don't want it to be too uniform either. So just roughly chop it up into about a centimetre square. But as I say, it's not going to be perfect as long as you've not got some massive chunks in there, because then someone's getting a big bite and someone else is getting a small bite. So we just want to keep it fair across the whole lot of this ragu. So just get that chopped up, and now's the time to get it into the pan on top of them herbs. We're going to give that a couple of minutes just to warm through and let the fats in that brisket start to warm up and mingle with everything else and really flavour them onions and garlic and the herbs and let everything all come together. At this point, we're now going to add our tomatoes. We've got 2 cans of tomatoes, and then one of them cans I'm going to refill with water and put that on the top. Give it a good mix round, and then off camera, because I forgot to hit record, at this point you want to be adding a nice heaped tablespoon of tomato puree, and that is just going to really richen up this sauce as well. Get that all mixed together, get the lid of the Kamado shut, and leave it. We're just going to leave it for the first half an hour, and then every half an hour we're going to come back and give it a stir, just to make sure that nothing is sticking on the bottom. We don't want to be burning anything. So every half an hour we come out and we give it a turn. So after an hour it looked like this, and I took this to a 2.5 hour mark when it then looked like this. At this point it is time to take our ragu off. So I've taken it off. It's been cooked in the Kamado all of this time without the lid on the cast iron pan. We'll take it off, pop it onto a side, make sure you stick it onto a trivet or something, otherwise you are going to end up scorching any worktops or anything like that. So get that onto a trivet, get it onto a side, put the lid on top and leave that while we sort out our pasta. So pasta today, I'm using fresh sheets of pasta because I feel you get a better lasagna out of that, and it's going to give us a little hack that we can use in a minute as well. So we need to make sure our lasagna is the right size as our roasting dish for building lasagna. So my lasagna sheets are about 1 inch too long, so I've just measured that out, put a fold in it, and then laid that down on the rest of the sheets and cut them all to size so that we know that they are all the uniform size to be fitting into this dish. Then once you've cut that off, you can then put it back in place and fold your corners over so you know where the corners of your pan are, and just cut the little triangles off the corner of that, and we know that as we're building it then everything's going to fit absolutely perfectly. The little hack I mentioned a moment ago is this offcut of lasagna. A lot of people are just going to throw that away. You don't want to be doing that. Take your knife and cut these into 1/2 or 3s depending on whatever thickness you've got left over. Just cut them into about 1 centimetre or just under 1 centimetre strips, and this works beautifully as tagliatelle for another dish that we're going to be doing in a few weeks time on the channel. Get this into a sandwich bag or vac pack it if you've got a vac packer, and just get it into the freezer. It's in there, it's out the way, and it's ready for another dish, and you've saved yourself some pennies for another dish later on down the road. So let's get back to building. We're going to get our first layer of ragu in the bottom of the dish, and then lay our lasagna sheets on top of that. Then we're going on with white sauce. I got the missus to knock up a white sauce indoors because I'm no good at it. I mess it up every time. It's either super bland or it's so thick you have to like chew it. So that's her domain. She's knocked that up inside. But if you want to buy a jar of white sauce, then by all means, or search up some recipes and have a go at it yourself. But it's not my forte, so I'm not going to be showing you how to do something that I'm not confident in doing myself. So we're going to get that white sauce layer on top. Make sure that we spread that right out to the corners. Once we've got that on, then we go on with another layer of ragu. Get that all spread out to the corners as well. Then we're going on with another 2 pasta sheets, and then a white sauce, a little bit of a thicker layer on the top. So it just gives us that beautiful creamy layer on the top of the lasagna. And then I like to finish it off with some parmesan. Again, I keep this in the freezer because you buy a 200 or 250 gram bag of ready grated parmesan and you use a quarter of a bag, and then we put it in the fridge and we forget about it. 2 weeks later it goes in a bin. Squeeze all the air out of that bag, stick it in the freezer. You can use it from frozen in these sorts of dishes. If you're cooking a hot dish, then it works perfectly from frozen. If it's going onto a cold dish, then take some out, put it into a dish and let it defrost at room temperature. Because it's so powdery, it won't take very long at all. But this is frozen directly out of the bag, I've just scrunched it up to make it back to being the individual little granules, and we're just going to give that a beautiful little dusting on the top, and it's a nice little flavour kick just to really lift the last piece of this lasagna. So we've got it built, and now I need to get it back into the Kamado. It's only going to take 25 to 30 minutes in there just to get it brown. I took mine out after 25 minutes because we was all starving. I could have left it in there another 5 to 10 and browned it off a little bit more, but it's cooked through. The pasta's soft. That's the advantage of using fresh pasta over dry pasta, is that you can take it off a little bit quicker. We'll take it off. We've got no taste tests today, and while we're on the subject of taste testing, I want you to let me know in the comments whether you stick around and you watch taste tests when I do them, because I do get a massive audience dip right around this point. So I want to know if you watch them, and if you don't watch them, why don't you watch them? I've got some nice pictures now of it being dished up inside. You can see the beautiful layers, and I can tell you now, this without a doubt was everybody's best lasagna they have ever eaten. The brisket worked beautifully. That balsamic vinegar just cuts through the fat, so it's not too fatty and too rich. It's perfectly balanced and absolutely fantastic. So you could use this with any leftover beef with a higher fat content. If you've got chuck or anything like that, it's going to work absolutely perfectly. Short ribs, if you've got some leftovers of that as well. And even if you haven't got enough to make a full dish, you can add this in with your standard minced beef, just for an extra different texture feel and a different flavour bump within there. So thank you very much for watching. Cheers.